So we've been talking about the hero's journey since the beginning of August. It's a long journey. We're getting close to the end. So we began with the first 4 archetypes: innocent, orphan. I'm not going to go through what every gift is because we'll be here all day. Innocent, orphan, warrior, caregiver. That's our base. That gives us a really solid structure into our way of living. And then there gets to be a point where that doesn't feel like enough, that we have all our structures in place, but something begins to pull us, or something doesn't make sense anymore, or sometimes life happens to us, and it's just things aren't happening. We get blindsided, so we start seeking, well, what's true here? I have everything, but there's something else I'm longing for, or there's something that I don't understand. So we set off on this hero's journey. And as I mentioned in my email, traditionally, well, actually, when I looked up hero on Google, I just wanted to see how it defined. The first thing it said is hero, usually a male. But that was amazing. That was the first thing it said. But it's something extraordinary. So the reason why it's considered heroic is because most people don't do it. And why would that be? I think all of us feel that call to have something more. We get pulled onto this journey. So the question is do we stay on the journey? Are we willing to go all the way to the end? So we have the seeker and the lover. The lover is beginning to say, well, what do I really love? I follow your bliss. What is my bliss? And we start seeking that. What do I love? And then last week we talked about the destroyer and the creator. And I primarily talked about the destroyer, and I'll say that in a minute. Why? Because the destroyer is when it gets really rough. That's really when the heroic part starts showing up. And that's often when people just say, never mind, I'm just going to go back to what I know is safe. Because the things that we care about, the things that are sacred cows is what we call them, the things that matter to us start feeling like they could die. The things that we held on to for safety start getting pulled away. I talked a little bit about last week about every tradition talks about you need someone to help walk you through that destroyer energy because it can get so dark and you can get really lost and confused during that time. What I mentioned and I offered was that I don't think everybody has their own teachers anymore. I think that's part of a path because so few people took the hero's journey that it was very specific for a few people. But now so many people are on the hero's journey that the key to hold us is what are the principles that last, that everything else dies away, but what are the principles that we know are true for us so that everything else goes away, no matter how bad it is, we hold on to those principles. So that was what I invited you to think about this past week. But why go through all that? I mean, what keeps us going? What keeps that hero not turning back and saying, forget it, I'm going home, this is too hard, and willing to go through that dark phase? It's the joy of becoming our authentic self, of becoming who we came here on this earth to be. And so what happens with that destroyer, all these layers, because the thing, they may be our sacred cows, but if we're holding on to them, that means they're not really ours, because we think we need to hold on to them. Those are getting pulled away. And we're finding, what she said in the reading is we survive. We discovered that we could go through all this and we survive. Not only do we survive, we're actually more ourselves than we were before all this stuff started getting ripped away. So we start trusting the process more. We're not as afraid. And I would say for me, that was one of the big moments, big points of being that. So there's 4 archetypes for the return. The ruler, the magician, the sage, and the fool. Next week we'll talk about the sage and the fool. This week we're talking about the ruler and the magician, but really it's the ruler. And the ruler integrates the magician, the sage, and the fool. So she was talking about just using the metaphor of a court, the royal court, that a king or queen will have a magician like a Merlin, who's sort of the magical part, will have the court fool, the court jester who can speak truth but with impunity, and the sage, the wise being. So that ruler within us integrates those 3 other beings, but it's still the source, it's the master. And what we need to know about the ruler is about mastery. It's about competence. So the ego, which we were developing in the first part of our journey, that's about control. So think about if you're just learning something new like the piano. When you first learn the piano, you're looking at the notes. You have to control everything. My finger I remember, you all probably took piano lessons at some point. You have to really here's where my fingers go, and I have to use this one and this one and this one. And everything is controlled and thought through. That's what the ego is doing with our life. It's like a micromanager. Okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to control, and I'm going to do that. That's not what the ruler is. The ruler is our God self. It's a master. So there gets to be a point where you've done this so many times that you don't even have to think about it. And the pianist or the guitarist can sit down and play without thinking. Their fingers just go. That's mastery. And that's what the ruler is within us. It's not controlling. It's in touch with all these different archetypes within us. I was at the very first talk I talked about how Genpo Roshi used voice dialogue. And he didn't call it archetypes. He just said we all have these different voices within us that we give voice to. So the ruler is aware of all these different aspects of ourselves. We're not one-dimensional beings. We have many different parts of ourselves. The shadow, the wounded, the orphan, the innocent, the warrior, the caregiver. These are all parts of ourself. Everyone here has them. The ruler acknowledges and is able to run a benevolent kingdom. It cares about all the voices. It has now gone through the darkness. There is no fear, so it doesn't need to repress anything. It doesn't need to repress the orphan who's in pain. It doesn't need to repress those places within us that says, I don't know if I believe, the seeker is I don't know if I agree with what the caregiver is saying. It can allow all the different voices, and it knows it needs to actually to run a harmonious kingdom. And that's what we all are. So that's the intention here. One of the reasons, what I love about New Thought is its focus was everyone was to find their direct authority from within. It wasn't about having a mediator, a minister, a priest, an imam, a rabbi, a psychologist. They all help us, teachers. All of these are things that help us, workshops, books. They all help us, but the authority is within us. The idea is that we are each the leader of our own life. So it behooves all of us. I think that what we are trying to do in this planet as what we're evolving is to move away from individual leaders, which is why I tend to get a little uncomfortable around spiritual celebrities. They're fantastic, but sometimes I think it pulls us away from forgetting, my inner celebrity. The power and the authority is within me, because we can even do it on our spiritual journey. We start the spiritual journey and then we get hooked on a teacher. They have the answer. No, nobody has the answer but you, for you, inside of you. And you become more and more, that doesn't become just a concept. The more you go on the hero's journey, because the hero's journey, as I also mentioned last week, tends to be a little isolating. Because you're sort of trying to find out who I am. What do I believe? My things are getting pulled away. The things that are getting pulled away from me may not bother Diane, because we're different people. So there can be a little bit of loneliness that I'm struggling, and Diane can't answer my questions for me because her path is different than mine. It's a path of individuation. It's the alone seeking the alone, as Plotinus used to say. So there's this isolating process that can happen, but it has to happen in order for us to become our own leaders. If we're going to stop following what other people are saying, if we're going to stop following our family, our culture, spiritual teachers, and become the authority, we have to go through this heroic journey. So I actually think every one of us, it's essential for our world to evolve, to move past just those beginning stages of development, ego development, that we all need to go on this hero's journey. Now the hero's journey, as we've talked about, is spiral. It doesn't happen just once. So I wanted to give an example of that, and then I'll end with recognizing that the other part of the sovereign ruler is it connects. It finds how it connects with everything. So you become a ruler of your own life, but not opposed to other people. Then you start walking with other people. So I'll get to that in a minute. And I assume this, but I just want to just say it one time. When I share a story about myself, it's not about me. I'm trying to describe something, and I trust you all are applying it to your own life. It has no meaning if it isn't applying to your own life. And what I want to just show is how the joy of return, so we're on You're on the beginning, creating the stability, the hero's journey, and the return, and the joy of the return, and how it continues, how the cycle looks. So I've talked about previously, sort of my life being all up topsy-turvy emotionally. This was 91. I surrender my life, do my spiritual practices. God's first every day in my life. This was after all through college, like, what do I do with my life? I don't know who I am. I don't know what I care about. Trying to find the perfect job. That's often a seeking time. And so I surrendered my life. In May, I did a month of silence just by myself for 1 month. Got totally still, totally aligned. And when I came out of that so it wasn't just that month was sort of the end of the long hero's journey of that particular time of college, after college, trying to figure out what I was doing. And I'll never forget this. I knew I was here to serve God, and went back to the East Coast, was at my mom's house, and I was just sort of listening. What am I here to do? But I was so connected now because I was doing my spiritual practices. I'd done my month of silence. And I remember standing in my mother's kitchen, and I was about to go talk to someone to explore another possibility. And I remember having this awareness. I'm like, I have no fear. And I suddenly felt all this compassion because I saw all this fear that I had had for years. And I'm like, I don't feel any fear. I just know everything. I know that I'm in oneness. I know that everything is all good. And it was the most joyful, freeing feeling. And it was so contrasted against all the fear that I'd felt up to then. And I think that's part of what the hero's journey does for us. It starts pulling away all these fears that we have that stop us, that block us. We move through them, and we say, I'm okay. We do whatever we need to do on our journey so that return is, and that lasted for years. So everything flowed. I found the perfect job. I loved my job. I loved what I was doing. So I was in this place of return, integrating, worked in a hospital, was serving. The king is involved in the kingdom. It's not isolating. It's not a hermit. It's part of everything that's happening and participating. And then that was all great. And I was taking science and mind classes and just sort of in the flow. And then I got the call to be a minister. Well, that just threw me off again. And that put me on the journey again. What am I supposed to be a minister of? What does that look like? Blah, blah, blah. So that went on. And then I became a minister in 2000. 7 years later after the call. So I was in this whole journey, all this, and it was just plain hard work. And I had high school graduation, college graduation, practitioner graduation. But when I graduated from ministerial school, there was just like, it was heaven. It's like, I remember thinking, it's not going to be that great. It was so great. And that lasted, that feeling of joy. So I graduated in 2000, and just, again, I knew I was standing in, I didn't know how I was going to be integrated into the world, but I did know I was doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing, that I had been working a lot of years to get to that point, and it felt so wonderful, and I felt very free. That freedom, that joy, the fearlessness, the love, every time we get to the end, we return from our hero's journey. And what I'm trying to show is that it's cyclical. So then I was on fire, and I had been in, that's why I brought Scott Murcheson for our last guest speaker. Anyone who's been in ministerial school for several years, all you're doing, full-time, is sitting around in classes talking about the big questions. And you're doing this for years. By the time you come out, you're so on fire because you've just I know the answers. No, but you've been talking about it with your classmates and your teachers, and the energy's going. And the reason why Celebration was centered, because I was thinking about when I first started speaking there, I got standing ovations every single week I spoke because I was just on fire. And so everything, this flow from 2000, the time off, I loved having time off because I had been in school my entire life. So it was the first time I didn't have homework. It was great. And I was enjoying that. And then I was starting on ministry, and everything was in the flow. And then last week I talked about that moment where I thought, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm supposed to be a minister in this teaching. Bam, I'm back on the journey again. And I spent the next 10 years on this journey of what do I believe, what do I think, if I'm going to stand up and be a minister. So that threw me on another journey. And what I was telling Beth, that one of the reasons why I was called to do this series on the hero's journey is because I feel very much on the return level. I feel like I've been on this journey for 10 years and I'm really clear where I am, and now I'm in the integrating process. Like, okay, how does this fit with other people? So I'm taking different classes with my colleagues, with different ministerial colleagues. I'm reaching out to people in other organizations. Okay, I've been all these years, I know where I am. Now how does this fit with the world? How do I fit in? So, but it's fun. It's like there's not fear. There's just joy. Like, oh, I get to play after 10 years, after all those years of trying to figure out what do I believe? Who am I? Where's my philosophy? There's joy. There's freedom. There's that breaking free. Man, when you were saying that breaking free, I'm like, yeah, it's great. So that's how it looks like individually. So somewhere in your life, you've had this hero's journey. Think of it, where you've been on a journey and you have that moment of return where you're like, I've worked through it. I'm on the other side and I feel freer. I feel happier. I feel fearless. I don't have all this fear carrying around. Like things are just blocked away. Can y'all think of that time in your life? It's glorious, isn't it? And we just continue on it. So I figure I'm enjoying this return, and I know something else will again push me onto some other journey, but I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts. But I was also thinking I thought a great image of this whole hero's journey. Last week I was leaving church and I thought, I can't believe I've been talking about heroes for like as many weeks as I have, and I haven't brought up any we've done a lot of movies, for those of you who weren't here previously. I haven't done any superhero movies. I'm not going to get into details of any superhero movies, other than, to me, it's a perfect example of Captain America and the Avengers, because they are all, you all know the Avenger movies? To be honest, I see so many of them with my boys that they all sort of merge together. So I can't say I'm really speaking about any one particular movie, but what I love about what I started to see was that all these superheroes started working together. And I think that actually reflects the culture that we're living in. If you remember, I never saw the movies, but I remember people talking about Rambo. Rambo, Sylvester Stallone would come in and single-handedly destroy the whole army. And there's so many movies like that where the hero, a male usually, would single-handedly destroy all these people by themselves. And what I love of what's happening in these Avenger movies is you have multiple superheroes all coming together. And even the last one, Captain America and the Civil War, they disagreed. For those of you who haven't seen it, it was remarkable. They had to deal with the consequences from their former battle. Oh, you know what? When we were zapping buildings and buildings were falling apart, innocent people died. That in fact, we might be hurting people as much as we are helping. It was pretty deep. And how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the collateral? Whoever thinks about superheroes thinking things like that. And the Civil War was how they felt they should deal with that. But this is the point that Carol Pearson makes in her book, that we become sovereign of our own kingdom and queendom. So every one of those superheroes had to deal with their own view. They didn't look to each other to find their answers. They had to find their own answers. And it's very clear when you're watching a superhero movie with multiple superheroes that they're not relying on each other. They all sense their own authority. They all feel their own superpowers. They all feel their own strengths, and yet there's an interdependence. They rely on each other. There's a collective, and I think that's where we are as society, where we're not leading on one person, that we're starting to recognize we're so clear about our own gifts that we don't feel competitive with other people's gifts. We are excited by other people's gifts. We're excited that we all get to work together, that I look around, people in this community who have superpowers that we are creating as a community. That's when it gets exciting. That's when it gets less lonely. So really the return is about reintegrating back into society. I'm just going to say quickly The Magician, because I think The Magician is what we do in New Thought. The Magician, she talks a lot about our words create our reality. You start to connect. The magician in us is that which is connected to a higher power. It's highly intuitive. It listens. And that's actually where our gifts come from. So if you look at these superheroes, they each have their gift. Well, we each have our gift. We each have our own superpower. And the way we discover it through that hero's journey, and especially during that destroyer phase, when everything gets pulled away, we start to feel into our own uniqueness. We start to feel into what is our gift here, that when everything else gets away, there's something still about me that's completely unique. That is me. That is mine, my gift. So many times we focus just like it's She kept using like a psychologist or a doctor, sort of healing professions, or shaman. They're healers. But I think everybody's a healer when you shine your unique gift. Musicians are healers. Teachers are healers. Writers are healers. That we all heal simply by being who we are, by shining our unique self. And we need everyone else to shine their unique self. We need to walk in partnership with one another to create a world that works for everyone. We need to work in partnership with all our other superheroes in the room to create heaven on earth. Because that's what we're here to do. We're not here just to have my heaven and everyone else doesn't matter. We are here to create heaven for everybody. That's the whole theme for our year, is a world that works for everyone. For everyone. But that means everyone has to go on the hero's journey, because no one else gets to do it for us. We have to have the strength. And what happens is we're all on these hero's journeys at different times. So we can support people where they are on their journey. So if you're on the return side, you can help. You can just be that support. You can't be the answer, but you can be the support for the people who are on the hero's journey. If people are still creating their structures or feeling like they need to go back and create structures, we could support them in that. That we all support each other at different stages. So I want to end, and I look forward to talking next week about the sage and the fool. I don't think I'm giving away confidentiality, and if I am, I'm sorry to the class. But there was a class where we were talking about this, and we were talking about the ruler, the magician, the sage, and the fool, and it was amazing how everyone related to the fool. I love that. So I'm looking forward to that next week. But the marriage of the ruler and the magician is in essence similar to the Bodhisattva vow. The Bodhisattva vow is, I'm going to almost get totally enlightened, but not completely. Before I go all the way, I'm going to go back and help my brothers and sisters. There's a commitment to other people. I'm not going to go for the total glory, because I know there's so many people behind me who are still suffering, who are still in pain. And that is what the magician in us, that's what we see. That's why we love heroes, because the heroes are not only about themselves. They are fighting for other people. They are fighting to bring their gifts to make this world a better place. And that's what we're here to do. We're not here just to find our own enlightenment. We're not here to go on our hero's journey just for our own aggrandizement. The ruler, the queendom, cares about the whole kingdom, cares about the entire place. So we have the magician within us that is so connected to that enlightened self, that always are already enlightened self, that God's self that is within us. It knows it, it's connected, it feels it, and it uses that connection. It gives it to the ruler. It gives its guidance to the ruler. It helps the ruler be a benevolent ruler in our own interior world, but in the world in which we live. May we all have that Bodhisattva vow in our heart. So let's pray. And as we enter into prayer, I recognize that I am entering into prayer with a community in a room full of heroes, light beings. There is that within all of us that knows the source of who we are. We know that we are made in the image and likeness of that which has no name, which is beyond all concept, which has no form. And yet it is more real to us than the chairs on which we sit. It is closer to us than our very breath. It is everything. And as we court this presence, this power, this source within us, this magical essence that glitters in joy and delight all of the time, unrelentingly, just pure joy, it is who we are. It is who everyone in this room is. Everything on this planet is made in the substance. We are all starlight. We are all literally light. We are light beings. Every creation, every form on this planet, plants, animals, the environment, every human being. We are all these beautiful light beings creative, intelligent, free, unlimited bliss. And we join together to remember that we are not the creators, but the beholders of all the magnificent ways that this divine presence likes to show up. And so we behold with the glory of the living God all the aspects and all the dimensions that each of us are individually. We behold our inner kingdom and queendom. We behold all those beautiful voices that we have in our head, and we reject none of them. That we are that divine compassionate self that sees and feels into every aspect of our being with love, with grace, with harmony. We reject no part of our kingdom. We hear and listen to it all, and we allow its power and its glory and its gifts to shine. And even as we know and say and hold this for ourselves, and we behold the beauty and the magnificence of our own soul, our own beautiful human self, we hold this for our planet Earth. We reject no voices. We turn nothing away. We open our heart into infinity for all life, for all form, for all of God's creation as itself. Though it can be showing up in a completely different way, we see that which is behind the appearance. We see behind the form, and we see that which is real, the beauty and the harmony and the love of pure spirit. We see the one life, the one power, and the one presence, and it is from this place all the good of the universe shines and evolves itself to heaven on earth. We are it. We are that conscious vortex of seeing and beholding right here and right now, our inner kingdom and our outer kingdom. We are committed to being that benevolent king and queen, inwardly and outwardly. I am so grateful for this. I am so grateful to stand in agreement with a room full of heroes who have said yes to this journey, who have said yes to their own magnificence. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, God, for your magnificence as all of us here today and for all of life. I release this word now. I completely let it be. And I invite all people who know they are heroes to join me in saying, and so it is. Amen.